Hello everyone, this is Daughter Darkness, and today we're continuing with the very belated reviews of Doctor Who Series 11. Again, I apologise about that. I will definitely review every single episode. It's just, getting around to actually doing it. But yeah, so episode 3, Rosa, of course. And going into this, obviously, I liked both of the episodes up to it, but I thought they were kind of just okay, as the early episodes of any series tend to be. And then we've got a historical story, which in modern Doctor Who tends to be not amazing stories, with some obvious exceptions. But yeah, so the first two episodes were quite functional. This one, it's brilliant. I remember thinking, when the Doctor was announced to be a woman, that one interesting way that they could actually handle it would be to have her go to a period in time where a woman realistically isn't going to be able to just come in and take control, because people aren't going to listen to her because she's a woman. Because in modern times, or in the future, or even the recent past, the Doctor can still be respected, but further back that might not be the case. And I thought then, they'll never do that. Doctor Who just does, child history. They don't bother getting into the really big issues like that. But then this episode comes along and hits you straight over the head with one of the heaviest topics there is, which is racism and segregation and everything that was going on in America in the 1950s. And with two of our main characters not being white, that obviously affects them as well. It's an interesting thing to do with time travel that Doctor Who has never really done before. At most, you'd have an offhand remark or something like Bill had in Thin Ice, where that person was racist towards her and then the Doctor punched him in the face. Yeah, that was a good moment, but it wasn't really dealing with the issue that much, because we moved straight on. But yeah, really the thing here is the portrayal of civil rights that is really good and really hard-hitting, and it makes people think. Without going into too much detail, obviously, certain recent movements, political movements, general sentiment from reactionary people in the modern world, they seem to resent the fact that different people, whether in terms of race, religion, sexuality, or whatever the case may be, that they're starting to gain equal rights, and then it leads to certain electoral results. So an episode like this is really timely. In the week that this episode released, there was that incident on the Ryanair flight where a woman was abused horribly by a man who didn't want to sit next to her purely because she wasn't white. And things like that, it still happens. It's not law, but it still happens. And I think the way that this represents things as, it does get better, we still got a way to go, reminding us of where these things started, is a good reminder that we've still got a long way to go. And I generally don't look at the reception of episodes before I review them, and that's kept even for the episodes that I've seen since this one, and obviously this was out weeks ago, but I did have a look at some reception, particularly the ones that stood out was parents who had said that it had led to some difficult but important conversations with their children who didn't understand why people would be treated like this just because their skin's a different colour, or how people just let this happen. It wasn't just the bus driver shouting at her to get off, it was everyone else doing nothing. Even the Doctor in the end being forced into that situation. So that kind of thing, it just means that this episode is really worth it, and it makes a positive impact. When shows like this that are entertaining for children can also teach them lessons, not about historical facts or anything like that, but that just make you think and raise the issue and make sure that people who aren't racist don't get complacent with the fact that, we've come a long way from there. So, yeah, in this story, Ryan is given the spotlight again, which, obviously it makes sense. He is the black companion, so he's the one who's going to be suffering the most from being in a situation like this. He's here and he's causing trouble just by his existence. From the first moment when he gives that woman's glove back to her and nearly causes an incident before Rosa Parks actually breaks it up, that is the one when I was like, oh, they're actually going to do this, are they? And then, you go on to other things like they're not allowed to sit in the same bar as white people because he's black and he's with them, before building up to the lighter moment where he goes with Rosa Parks to her meeting with early civil rights leaders, including a cameo from Martin Luther King, which was nice, because it means that, there is hope. Things do get better. This is horrible, but it does improve. It doesn't get fixed completely, but it gets better. The really uncomfortable moment towards the end where the Doctor and her companions have to basically stand by and do nothing while the event goes on and Rosa Parks gets arrested and everything. That's a really strong moment, because the Doctor here is the preserver of history. The threat here, it's not some big alien monster thing that's there and separate to the thing that's going on. This thing is trying to stop her from doing something that was horrible that she had to do it, but if she hadn't, things wouldn't have got better. And I think the representation of all that was just really, really good. And it's the best use of history in the modern series of Doctor Who so far by a mile. Really, probably in all of Doctor Who, at least in the show, maybe not from audio dramas or whatever. But then we have the actual villain, who is the most forgettable part of the story, even if he does offer a good insight, because he, as a character, is unimportant, really. As representing something, he is bigger, because, as I mentioned briefly earlier, given the present climate where people gain positions of power who have these ideals where maybe they're a bit traditional, would be a very kind way to put it, and they put things in place that sort of roll back the years. You have people from a time where systematic abuse of people based on race is considered wrong, but people don't necessarily agree with that. I have no doubt if we had time travel now, someone would try to do something like this. And this was a raising of the stakes without, having a massive army invading Earth or whatever, because the last two were very self-contained. It was a handful of characters. This is the whole course of history. Imagine where we'd be without that civil rights movements growing from Rosa Parks. Yes, I know, obviously, here in the UK, the racism wasn't ever as systematic as in the US, but the attitudes were still there. Stories of people like Rosa Parks and that sort of thing still changed attitude. And it's a reminder of how important people can be, and how it does, sometimes it does just take one person to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. And then things can get rolling and can get better. And this is what the Doctor is all about. Yeah, she can save the universe and all that, but what she's really there for, she shows up and has to right a wrong. She fixes a little thing and makes sure that time goes as it needs to. But really, she's a lot more subdued in this episode. It's in a way that felt fitting. Her running around blasting off quips and all that kind of stuff all the time when you've got this awful thing going on doesn't really work. But I do think she did do a good job at times when she had to take control of a room and that sort of thing and use her intelligence to sort things out. I also quite liked Graham in this episode. He did have his funny moments, but his line, I don't want to be a part of this. It was a nice line, because he's just a person. He's grown up in a world where this always happened. A horrible event that created something great. And his role there was good. Meanwhile, Yasmin, she's kind of in an interesting situation in this episode. Because, she's not white, but she's not black either, so she didn't really know where she stood. You have got people thinking that she's Mexican or whatever and having their own prejudices about that. And then, she's not sure where she's supposed to sit in the bus. So yeah, there were some interesting ideas here, but probably not enough time to really go into what it meant for her. So the focus really is on Ryan in this one, as he's the person who's most directly affected by what's going on. So really, yeah, I just can't stop praising this episode. It's fantastic. I'm really impressed that they're willing to go as far as they did in this episode, and explore such a heavy issue so early into this new era. It's a great sign for the future. It reminds me in some ways of Vincent and the Doctor, which is one of the few historical episodes in recent years that have been really good, because it didn't bother, there was a chicken thing that was there or whatever, but really the thing that people remember this episode for, it's depression and the way that that's represented, and it was done really well there, just as the civil rights thing was done really well here. This is not a pure historical, of course, but the sci-fi stuff is certainly toned down. The main thing here is the theme and the issue. So yeah, this was quite an uncomfortable viewing, but it is an episode that made a huge impression on me, and it highlights these issues so well. By a long way, this is better than the first two episodes. It's the first outstanding episode of this new era of Doctor Who, and that's all I have to say. So what did you think of Rosa? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below the video, and while you're down there, please like this video if you did, and if you liked it, then check out my other videos and subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you for watching.